Good morning. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is the final installment of our autumn virtual event series. Thank you for joining us today. You will hear from two wonderful family members of some current residents. They'll be talking about their experiences of having a loved one here at the Village at Augsburg. And I am Adrienne Brown, the sales coordinator here at the Village at Augsburg. This morning, you will hear from our sales director, Suzanne Roos. And our two guest presenters are Ellen and Thelma. Before we get started, we'll go over a few housekeeping items. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you will see a chat tab. We will not be using the chat today. However, you will be able to ask questions using the Q&A tab. If you click on that tab, you'll get a pop-up box. Feel free to type in your question, hit submit, and I will receive that and we will answer your questions either throughout the presentation or at the end of the presentation, but we will definitely get to your questions. If you were here early, there was a poll question, and that question read, are you comfortable visiting a senior community in person right now? And Suzanne, it looks like about 2/3 of our guests are not comfortable with that at this moment. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Suzanne Roos, our sales director.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you again for joining us for our webinar this morning. It's a beautiful day here in Baltimore, and I appreciate you taking some time to spend with us. This webinar this morning will be about an hour long. We want to be respectful of your time. It may run a little bit shorter, but we try to keep it to about 1 hour. So thank you for joining us. As Adrienne said, my name is Suzanne Roos, and I'm the sales director here at the Village at Augsburg. And I know that some of you have joined us for previous webinars, and for those of you who have not joined us or are new to Augsburg and want to learn a little bit more, I'm going to share with you just a little bit of our history before we start our event today. So Augsburg has a very long, rich history here in Baltimore. We have been part of the community since 1892. We actually started as an orphanage, and it was a church mission that started Augsburg. And when we moved here to Campfield Road, that was 1929, and we've been here on this campus since then. So over 90 years, we have been on Campfield Road, and we now serve about 300 to 350 residents here on our campus, and that includes independent living residents who live in apartment-style homes. We also have assisted living, and we have skilled nursing care. And skilled nursing care includes short-term rehab and long-term care. So while we started out in 1892 as an orphanage, we are now a full-fledged continuing care retirement community. And as I said, we've been here for many, many years. Just this past January, we became affiliated with National Lutheran Communities and Services. And really what that means is that prior to January, Augsburg had been operating as a standalone community for all the years that we'd been in existence. And in order for us to really grow and to remain strong and healthy, we became affiliated with a larger organization that matched our mission. And doing that has really been a wonderful experience for us. And we are so pleased and excited at all the things that are planned for us in the future under National Lutheran. So that's a little bit about Augsburg. And today, what I'd like to do is share with you some personal stories from two family members who have loved ones living here in independent living right now. Both of these ladies worked with their respective family member, a sister and a mother, to help guide them through the process of selecting Augsburg. And they are going to talk today with me and with you about what that experience was like, looking for a community, what it's been like having their loved one live here at Augsburg during 2020, which has been an unprecedented year, that word that we hear all the time. And so I welcome you, Ellen and Thelma, to join us now for our conversation about living here at Augsburg. And okay, so ladies, turn on your microphones so I can introduce both of you. So for the audience, we have two family members here today, Ellen and Thelma. Ellen, her mother, Marianne, is a resident here in Independent Living. She's coming up on her 1-year anniversary here at Augsburg in a few weeks. And Thelma's sister, Murdy, has been a resident of Augsburg for about 1.5 years, also in Independent Living. So thank you, ladies, for spending some time with us this morning. And I just want to really remind everybody that this is just meant to be a very candid conversation. And if you do have questions that you want to pose to either Ellen or to Thelma or to myself, feel free to put those in the Q&A box, and Adrian will get those to us through the conversation. So let's get started. So good morning, ladies, and thanks again for your time. And I would like for each of you to take a turn just sharing a little bit about your story of working with your mom and your sister and how you came to find Augsburg, and a little bit about that process. Ellen, you want to start?
Sure. Thanks, Suzanne. Hi, everybody. So the way my mom came to start to consider Augsburg was actually through my brother and I bringing it up to her. She is a very independent person. She had, lived on her own since the 70s, worked, managed all her finances, took very good care of my brother and me. And she loved where she lived. She lived in a condo in Harford County. And so she was very happy with the way things were. My brother and I started to notice that she was having a little more trouble with, some day-to-day tasks. And so we started talking with her about looking around, doing some research. And she wasn't actually crazy about the idea initially. She ended up sort of having a joke about it, which was, I want to do this in terms of moving to a retirement community. I want to do it before it is done unto me. Before it has to be done. She wanted to be a really active part of the decision making, and she was. And so we visited some places. Augsburg was actually the first place we visited, and we got a very good feeling about it from the beginning. But we came back a number of times, had conversations with residents and staff, and my mom especially was impressed with just how warm and friendly everybody we met was, staff and residents alike, and people had interesting stories. We probably talked to 6 or 7 residents, retired teacher, someone who came to Augsburg when they were still working, which surprised us. So there was a whole range of experiences, and it just really felt like a place that could feel like home. And in fact, that's what it feels like to my mom. And also kind of, I live in Pennsylvania, but visiting Augsburg really does kind of feel like visiting a family place. So it was not easy. There were some hard conversations with my mom at times, but now she says she's so glad she made the move when she did. So that's a little bit about our journey.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Ellen. Okay, Thelma, your turn to talk about Murdy and her journey here.
Good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to be able to share my experience with you. So my sister and her husband were living in a 3-story house in Baltimore. And my brother-in-law was getting sicker and sicker. My sister was his primary caregiver. And so they started talking about moving into a retirement community. And I happened to be at a conference, a business conference, and someone mentioned Augsburg. So my son and I took my sister out to Augsburg, and she immediately fell in love with it. The things that she mentioned were, as we walked through the halls, she met residents who seemed very at home, very happy. The staff was very inviting and professional and courteous. And however, her husband was not yet ready to move. So fast forward, about a year and a half ago, her husband passed away, and she really could no longer live in that house by herself. So we started getting more serious about retirement communities. And I live in Maryland, but in a different city. And we looked at places close to me because I'm really now her primary care provider in the family. But we kept thinking about Augsburg. So we went back and we met Suzanne and others. And my sister picked out an apartment should she be able to move there. While we were walking down the hall, the pastor stopped her. He was on his way from the cafe for lunch, and she just thought that was amazing. She had a conversation with him. And so once she really kind of went through the process of determining financially whether it was feasible, and she was already sold on sort of the family living arrangement. We looked at some high-rise retirement communities. She really wasn't into that. She lived in Baltimore for much of her adult life. Augsburg, interestingly enough, I lived in the Lockhern community many years ago and did not know anything about Augsburg. It's a beautiful campus, and although it's a large campus, somehow it's secluded. It's Baltimore, but it's secluded. So she really also liked that as well. So she did decide to go forward. She moved in, and she's extremely happy that she did.
Perfect. So one of the things that I always like to let people be aware of, a lot of times people wait to move until they wait for a crisis to happen. And then they're not really able to make a lot of choices. They're kind of operating in that crisis mode. And both of you really helped, your family member make a plan and move before there was a need or a crisis. And I think that that's really important for people to, understand the benefit of doing it that way. And the reason that it gives not just the family kind of a peace of mind, but it gives the resident an opportunity to participate in the decision. And Ellen, you mentioned that your mom really wanted to participate in that decision. And I remember many visits here with her. And she was very, very adamant about, her asking questions and wanting to really feel like this was the right choice for her. So let's talk just a little bit about, some of those conversations that you have with your loved one to help them make the choice, like some of the things that you looked for in communities when you were picking one out, and how you came to settle that Augsburg was the right one for them.
So for us, we were looking, certainly for it to be well run and up to all standards. So it would be a safe place for mom to be. We also, frankly, were looking for a beautiful place. Mom was living in a condo where she was on a courtyard. The view out her windows was very nice. And, the apartment that she ended up choosing at Augsburg also looks out on a courtyard. And, a lot of the time she spends, like in the morning after breakfast reading the paper, she is looking out at that courtyard. And if I call her at such a time, you know, she will say, I have such a view. I have the best view here. And so, you know, so we both wanted it to be, you know, safe and well organized and comfortable. And we also wanted it to be beautiful and to have a certain kind of feeling. And it, you know, again, I mean, I said this already, but, you know, the sense of community and the sense that everybody we met really seemed to feel like they were part of a community, you know, meant a lot to my mom and meant a lot to us as well as the family.
Yeah, we are a relatively small community compared to some. We're larger than others too, but we are, as a continuing care community, we're relatively small, having about 300 or 350 residents. And one of the things that is nice with that is that the staff really does get to know all of the residents individually. We know them by name. They know us by name. No one here is really unknown for too long. So as soon as someone moves in, it's really just a matter of days before they are well known to the staff and to their neighbors in the community. Thelma, I think that Murdy, your sister, was one of those people who, she is genuinely just this very approachable, sweet lady. And in no time at all, you know, she had many, many neighbors, and the staff knew her. You know, same thing with Ellen's mom, Marianne. You know, Marianne has a very dry sense of humor, very, very witty. And it was a little challenging sometimes for some of the staff who weren't quite used to someone who would give it back a little bit. And but she really acclimated quickly and well. And both of them became very comfortable fairly quickly. Thelma, tell us a little bit about your experience now that, you know, Murdy's been here for 1.5 years, and what you've observed in terms of her, you know, settling in and her fitting in here and her well-being while she's been a resident here.
Sure. And can I just pick up on the last question to Ellen a little bit?
Oh, yes, sure.
Even before Murdy's husband passed away, when she was looking at Augsburg, they were very attracted to the 3-tier process, having independent living, assisted living, and skilled nursing, because Murdy thought that maybe, you know, she or her husband might need more care than independent living. So that was very attractive to her. The other thing that attracted her was she'd been sort of isolated caring for her husband for many years, but she's also, as you kind of alluded to, she likes people and she wanted to be around people, and she was stuck in the house before. And so now because she got that patio first floor apartment that she wanted, she loves watching the birds and the squirrels. And she and her neighbor do a little bit of gardening, even now socially distancing. But she feels very secure and safe. She keeps telling me, I'm not afraid to be in the apartment by myself. It's just very comforting. And she does like the fact that the staff treats her as if they are family. That really appeals to her. And my experience is actually the same. I mean, I get to visit her fairly frequently, and when the cafe and dining rooms were open and I would share a meal with her, I was amazed that shortly after maybe 1 or 2 visits, someone was even calling me by name. And so we really appreciate that. But she's very crafty. She loves to read. She really was excited when we walked through and saw the library. She saw that there was a beauty salon on site, and that also excited her. So she's feeling very comfortable. You know, it helped with her grieving process. She moved in shortly after, about 6 months, I think, after her husband passed. And I think just that sense of community that Ellen has mentioned a couple of times and that we feel, it's been a much easier process, I'm sure, than if she had stayed in her home.
Yeah, I think you know, we'll talk a little bit about COVID times, but the majority of our residents here are single. They are, we do have some couples that are here, but the majority of our residents are single. So they're coming in, some of them are coming in after a spouse or partner has recently passed away, or maybe they've been living independently at home for many years, and now they reluctant to move. Take me so long to move from my big house or my condo and the process of all of that. But once they get here, they always feel like, why didn't I do this sooner? You know, they always comment, just the convenience of having less to take care of, having more freedom, more time, and having that true sense of community. And the thing that people always comment on is the Augsburg spirit that is here. And I like to tell people that it really comes from the energy of the people that live here and work here. It's not something you can put your finger on. It's not something you can really explain, but it is definitely present here. And it's much more than, we are a faith-based community, but it's more than that. It's not just because of us being a faith-based community. It really is because of the spirit and the energy of the people who live and work here and who bring that every day. So a real sense of community. So both Ellen and Thelma have been able to visit over the last several months, even though we've had our share of quarantine time and we have had restrictions about visiting. But I do want to talk a little bit about the last several months and things that Augsburg has done, and from a family member's perspective, to have both of you talk about what your perception has been in terms of the care that you've seen given here, and the sense of security that you've felt having your loved one here. So talking just a little bit about the visits, we are at a point right now where we are able to have visitors come into independent living pretty freely. We do screen everyone upon entrance. Everyone has to be wearing a mask, and we will continue to do that. If we were to have a positive case within independent living, we have other protocols that come into place in terms of visits and quarantines and things like that. But since about May, I think we've been pretty good in independent living in terms of having the freedom of visitors and having time for both of you to come in and out. So let's talk a little bit about the communication and the family aspect during COVID, and what your perceptions have been about this. How secure and safe have you felt having your mom and your sister here over the last several months? You're on mute, Ellen.
That's the problem with muting. So it was very, very worrying, of course, when the pandemic hit, and we didn't know what it was going to be like for Mom, what was going to happen, and there was a period of time when we weren't able to visit, and but what we got to observe that we couldn't possibly have known would happen. Was to watch independent living, just completely reorganize so much of how the services were delivered. And, I know Suzanne was going door to door, helping with health checks and things that are not part of your job description, I think, Suzanne.
Yes, that's called other duties as assigned in everyone's job description in America. That's what it means. You do what you must do.
Yes. And so, I'm sure places everywhere, had to reorganize, but it just seemed to happen so quickly and so effectively, and the communication around it, emails started coming out to us as family about what was being done. The information was clear and it felt honest. It didn't feel like a PR kind of email. It felt like, we want you to know what's happening. And it was really a chance to see that it wasn't just a community of a lot of very nice, kind people, which of course is lovely, but in a pandemic, you don't just want kind, you want smart. And I felt very confident in the steps that Augsburg was taking in terms of visiting, and at times restricting visiting. And what that's done, as things eased up a bit towards the end of the summer, it also helped me have the confidence to visit. Because I felt like Augsburg would not be telling me that it was okay to visit my mom if it wasn't okay to visit my mom. And so, I have visited, wearing a mask and distancing and so forth. And that's not the way I would prefer to visit, but it gives me a lot of confidence in what's happening when I'm not there. Right. I mean, I get to see what happens when I am there, but it also helps me have confidence, so that I can encourage my mom to go to a group. Because there are some groups meeting, with precautions. And I could imagine not feeling comfortable encouraging my mom to go if I didn't have confidence. But I do, because I say, they wouldn't be offering the group if it wasn't being done safely.
Right, absolutely. So we did have to pivot very quickly. And as Ellen mentioned, every community responded differently, and the priority is always the care and well-being of the people that live here. That's our responsibility. So there were lots of hands that did things for the first time. I delivered mail, I delivered newspapers, I took temperatures and pulse oxygen levels, and we did daily wellness checks on all of our independent living residents. Of course, different protocols were taking place in assisted living and in our nursing home, but it really was an all hands on deck approach. Our communal dining, which is really an important part of our residents' day, of course, that had to shut down. And so we started delivering meals door to door every evening. And that actually is continuing right now, even though our dining rooms have reopened. And we do have quite a few residents who've chosen to come back into the dining room to eat together. We have protocols in there for that, but we really did have to shift how we are doing things. Thelma, I wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about your, your impressions of safety and protocols during COVID here with Murdy.
Yes, so unfortunately, I have a negative experience someplace else. My brother was in a nursing home in a different state, and sadly he passed away, but the contrast between his nursing home and the village at Augsburg, we immediately began getting emails, as Ellen said, about what was happening actually throughout the Augsburg community, which was so helpful to me and to the rest of my family to understand what was going on. And that did not occur in the other facility where my brother was. So for that, I'm eternally grateful. And because I have email and my sister does not, she gets a paper copy of everything I get, I believe. So I was able to often call her and let her know what I had learned. And she feels very comforted in knowing that I know as much as she knows, and sometimes ahead of time. Near the beginning, after certain restrictions were put in place, I had the ability to come and meet with her in the lobby of the of the facility. And then, more restrictions had to be put in place because of the protocols. And so with masks and with social distancing, I was then able to visit with my sister through her screen door or on her patio. And out of an abundance of caution, frankly, I'm still not really going inside her patio. So nice days like today, you know, we would sit outside. I think Memorial Day, we had a meal outside. And that's also very comforting to me to know that she's safe and she can really choose what she wants to do during this pandemic. She's very grateful that she can sit out in her hallway, socially distanced from others, to play bingo. She can participate in religious services. And so she feels like, despite the difficulty of the pandemic, she still has that sense of community, albeit different. And in fact, my other sister and I often joke that Murdy has a better social life than we do right now, because I just go to the grocery store and the pharmacy, but she has the ability to walk outside. And she has those few occasions where she can participate in activities. And she really appreciated being able to have her meals delivered to her door. I think she's still one of the people who's taking advantage of that.
She is, but I do see her outside walking. She
Yes.
has a neighbor that she walks with, and they are always socially distanced. They are always wearing their masks, but on a day like today, it wouldn't surprise me to find them outside. And you know, you bring up a good point about the fact that you have felt more isolated than she has at this point with your restrictions on what you're doing in your own home. And I've heard that a lot from people. I've been calling a lot of folks, checking on them, you know, people who I've met and who aren't quite ready to move here yet, but a lot of them have no family in the area, and they have really been limited to maybe contact from a neighbor to bring them a meal or to go to the grocery store for them. They're not having, you know, an ability to really socialize, to have activities. And I think that we've done a really good job at keeping our residents' lives as normal as possible under the circumstances. You know, there was a period of time where we were in a quarantine couple of weeks, and we were delivering everything, and we were keeping everyone as safe as possible by restricting them to their room or to only going out if they had a medical appointment or some really urgent need to be out. And doing that, we really contained everything. And testing, we tested our residents, all of them at one point. We still are very, very carefully, you know, monitoring the rate of positive cases in Baltimore County, and we follow those guidelines. We're preparing for the holiday season here and how we are going to allow visits, and some of our residents still drive and want to go out and be with family, so we have protocols in place for all of that. But it's nice to know that we are able to do a lot of the normal things to keep our residents engaged and happy. Both of you talked about communication, and one of the things that, you know, we really became affiliated with National Lutheran in January, and then everybody's world turned upside down around St. Patrick's Day. So Augsburg was already going through this transition in January with National Lutheran, and when the pandemic came and really came to Baltimore around April and early May, National Lutheran really did step up in terms of leadership and showing everyone the transparency with the memos that Ellen and Thelma both talked about. We still continue to do those. We have email lists that we process information through weekly or as needed. If it's more than once a week, then that's what we do. But we will probably continue to do that for the foreseeable future, because as everybody's heard, we're not expecting this pandemic to go away over the winter. And so we're keeping all of our protocols in place and making sure that we keep everyone safe all winter long. Ladies,
Can I say one
yes, yes.
I I was really amazed. I was really appreciative and amazed when I think you had a strike team, I forget the exact name of it, come in to really take care of the whole community as I understand it, and to work with the staff. And I thought, wow, that's really taking advantage of resources that are necessary to help you avoid getting into situations that other retirement communities got into. So thank you for that.
Yes, yes, we did. And that was definitely really, really important with us properly getting enough PPE, how to utilize it, all kinds of protocols that I'm sure now it's second nature for us. And we've really been transformed by this pandemic in terms of how we approach things. So now we have this whole new operational system in place that has become normal for us after 7 months. And I could see us definitely incorporating that going forward, you know, within the future. Hopefully this will never happen again in our lifetime, but if it does, at least we know what we've done and have things in place to help us, you know, going forward. Is there any other little stories that you would like to share about your experience? I know, Thelma, once we were talking about what to look for and the questions you should be asking when you're looking at a senior community for someone. And I'd love for you to share that with the audience, if you would.
Do you mean under the current circumstances or in general?
I think under the current circumstances was what we talked about more recently.
Yeah, I mean, if I were looking for a community for myself or a loved one, the questions I would ask is, how are you keeping your residents safe? What happens if a resident tests positive? What are you doing with your staff? Does the staff in assisted living, you know, also do work in, in independent living also do work in assisted living and skilled nursing? How are you keeping family members informed? What liberties do residents have? And if they're not following that protocol, do you have procedures in place to, you know, make improvements in that area? So I would really be concerned about a lot of the safety and security issues, like the whole idea of visitation. Even when before residents were really confined to, well, before my sister was confined to her apartment for a temporary period, and I was meeting with her in the lobby, I needed to go to the restroom. And before I could even leave that spot, my temperature was taken and I had to answer a few questions. So, you know, it was just amazing that even with procedures in place, sometimes there were some extra steps that were being taken. And I would want to know about all of those things before I placed a family member in a retirement community today.
And honestly, I think that most people now, after this experience, are going to ask those questions regardless, because those are things you should know. Whether, you know, if it's 4 months from now and there's a vaccine and everybody feels like things are getting back to normal, I would still want to have conversations with families about protocols and safety, because I think that's the reason you're choosing a community for your mom or your sister. You want to know that when you can't be there to keep them safe, someone will. That's really the number one reason people choose a community. They're looking for a safe option for their loved one.
Yeah, and I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Another question, which I would ask, but I took it for granted because I know, do you have medical personnel on site? And I know that you do, because if something happens, how quickly can my family member get assistance? That would be very important to me as well.
Yes. Ellen, any questions, anything you would recommend to people? You were very, very meticulous in your process with your family. When you visited Augsburg, you know, the questions and the detail that you went into.
I mean, everything that Thelma has said, you know, I agree with. You know, in terms of really feeling like it was a good fit, I think what was most helpful was to talk to residents, and I, you know, I think there have been some opportunities to do that, and you know, I'm sure that Suzanne and Adrian can, you know, connect people to do that more, you know, if it would be helpful. But that's what really gave us, I think, the confidence, you know, including my mom, that she could have a sense of what it would be like to be at Augsburg. You know, I guess my heart goes out to anybody who's trying to make this decision, you know, during a pandemic. And, you know, it seems like that would be a very hard, uncertain, um, you know, environment in which to make the decision. And, you know, it probably will be a slower adjustment or a harder adjustment, just because there won't be, you know, the same pace of meeting people and connecting with people. But I would say, you know, that you're not going to be alone in that process of adjusting and settling in. I mean, you never know when you're dealing with, you know, the sales and marketing people who, you know, kind of have a tendency to be very nice. Like, does that mean that everybody at the facility is that, you know, kind and accommodating? Um, and in this case, I would say yes. Suzanne and Adrian are representative of what staff at Augsburg are like. And also, you know, I felt kind of sad, you know, when my mom moved in, Suzanne and Adrian, because I thought, well, I guess we're not going to see Suzanne and Adrian anymore. They were amazing. And Adrian spent an hour with my sister-in-law in my mom's, you know, future apartment with little paper models of furniture on the floor, moving it around to find the right place for the dining room table, which will always be a nice memory. But we haven't had to say goodbye to Suzanne and Adrian, because they're around and they still care, and they, you know, they're connected to residents. So, you know, if you're contemplating making a move at a time like this, I guess I just want you to know that you will have help and support, with whatever the adjustment process is. And I think that's important to know.
Yes, and you know, Adrian and I work really as a team, and we try to make the move-in process as smooth as possible. And if that means connecting you with a realtor, connecting you with someone who can physically do the move for you, and sometimes it's us in the apartment with the family helping you decide where the furniture is going to go. But we do stay involved in the process even after the resident moves in. And the reason we do that is really because that is what Augsburg is. This is not a place where, you know, you're handed off to the next person and now it's that person's responsibility. We take our duty here really seriously, but everyone that's here has a heart for service, and that really is what it is. If I just stayed in my office all day and spent time on the phone calling people, or spent time on my computer and did not walk the hallways and know the residents who live here, I would not be able to do due diligence in bringing other residents here who fit and will feel comfortable in this environment. So one of the things that we work really hard at doing is making sure that the people who do choose to come and live here will be a good fit for this community, and that they will feel that that this is home to them, that this feels like their neighborhood, that it looks like their neighborhood, that the people that live here are the type of people that they want to have in their community for the rest of their life. Because the reality is, this is their last home, and this is the place where their, you know, friendships and their life stories will be shared one more time. Sometimes it's with a staff person, sometimes it's with a neighbor, but we make a great effort at really keeping those connections alive. And for anybody who can't come in person or who isn't comfortable coming in person right now, you know, we totally understand that. And we have done virtual visits with families. We have also the ability to connect you with current residents who are willing to talk to you on the phone, or who are willing to do a Zoom call like this so that they can see you and they can answer your questions directly. And so if you ever feel like that's what you would like to do and kind of get me out of the way, we have no problem connecting you with some other people here, even other people that work here. You know, sometimes it's important to know the other people that you're going to be coming into contact with every day. And so we're happy to do that. Before we wrap up, Thelma and Ellen, are there any other thoughts that you'd like to share with the folks before we say farewell for the day? Any other last minute words of wisdom? Or
I would just encourage people who might be interested in Augsburg to take your advice and talk with, if possible, to talk with other residents and with staff. My sister, I think, was a little leery about how she would fit in, but she had the opportunity to actually talk with a couple of residents at that time to see their apartment. That may not be possible now, but just walking through the halls, she saw the diversity of the community. She saw people who spoke to her throughout the walk through the hallways. And so I think it's really important to hear from residents what their experience has been, if that's a possibility.
Yes, it is. It is. And even though we can't bring visitors into apartments of our residents, there are ways to show people the inside of someone's apartment without them physically coming into it. If they wanted to see, you know, well, what does this look like? You know, what if, or, and also, you know, having that, that conversation, like I mentioned, is, I think that is the really important part of selecting a community. And my advice has always been to people, if you're looking at multiple communities and trying to make a decision, you know, you need to talk to people that live there. I work here. I'm only here 8 or 10 hours a day. I don't live here, or more when needed, but it is important to know from the residents' perspective, because they will be very honest with you, and they will tell you, you know, there isn't a perfect place, but there's a place that's perfect for you, and this may be it. And so I really do encourage people to ask, to have that conversation, and we can certainly connect you with our residents. So I think we're at the point, ladies, where we've had a wonderful conversation today. And I do want to thank you both, Ellen and Thelma, for spending some time and sharing a little bit of personal experience with our audience. We have recorded this presentation, so it will be available to people if they want to watch it again. We will have it available also to people who missed it today but want to review it later. So we'll be able to do that. And I also want to remind everyone in the audience that we have been doing this series for 6 weeks. And one of the things that we promised at the beginning of the series was that at the conclusion, we would be drawing the names of 3 attendees for some gift card prizes. So Adrian will be reaching out tomorrow to our 3 winners. So be sure that you are checking your email or wait for a phone call from Adrian, and hopefully one of you out there will be receiving one of those calls or emails tomorrow from Adrian. And that's our way of saying thank you for joining us for these 6 weeks. We are kind of making plans now for our winter series. and we would love your input. So if there are any topics that you are interested in hearing about for the winter, we would love to hear what those are. I believe Adrienne reached out to a lot of people already with an email kind of asking you for your input on what you would like to hear from Augsburg this winter. And so please feel free to share that with us. And thank you again, ladies, for joining us. I hope you both have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. And to everyone who has joined us today and who's joined us for these 6 weeks, on behalf of everyone here in Augsburg, I thank you so much for your time. We're so grateful that you are considering our community, and I do hope that you'll reach out. Call me, we can schedule a virtual appointment. You are welcome to come in also for a safe in-person visit. And I wish you all a very happy and healthy Thanksgiving season. Stay well. Bye-bye.
Same to you.
Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.